Hey everyone, welcome back to the Weekly Awakening Podcast. This is your host, Cosmic Colleen, back with another weekly astrology update. So this week, it is episode 259, and it is Monday, April 7th. It's a cold and rainy April 7th up here in the Philadelphia area, but I hope my listeners who are all over the world, it's a little bit warmer and sunnier for you. So today, this Monday, Venus retrograde conjunct Saturn at 7:01 a.m., We're going to be feeling this energy all day today, tomorrow, throughout the week. Mercury stations direct this morning. So Mercury is now direct in Pisces, 7:07 a.m. However, this morning still felt a little wonky. Tuesday, the 8th, Venus retrograde will sextile Uranus and Taurus, 12:47 a.m. East Coast time. Thursday, April 10th, Mercury direct will conjunct Neptune, 9 p.m. Friday, April 11th at 10:26 a.m. Mars will trine the North Node in Pisces. So we got Mars in Cancer trine the North Node in Pisces. Saturday the 12th, we had 8:22 p.m. East Coast time. We got the full moon in Libra. And then Venus stations direct just a few minutes. What is that? You know, I don't know my math. 42 minutes after the exact full moon, Venus stations direct in the sign of Pisces. So we got a lot of energy. So first, let's talk about the end of Venus and Mercury retrograde transits. Mercury, it stations direct today. So things will feel a little bit more clear as the day progresses. This morning was probably still a little wonky, but as the day progresses and the week progresses, things will feel more clear. The message will be clear. It won't be so spacey or sleepy or confused like it has been feeling. My biggest players with the astrology is obviously my mutable astrology sign. So that's my Gemini, my Virgo, my Pisces, my rising, but also the Aries and the Scorpio and Taurus. You guys are all feeling this week's energy, and it's been intense. Now, we began this retrograde in Aries, then we retrograded both Mercury and Venus back into Pisces, where they're going to station direct. Mercury on Monday, Venus this weekend, and then they will move back into Aries. So again, for the 7 signs, Gemini, Virgo, Sag, Pisces, Aries, and Scorpio, Taurus, how did this begin for you? That's one of the things I want you to reflect on. One of the whys. How did this show up for you? If you're not sure, look at your birth chart. What houses do Pisces and Aries rule in your birth chart? For me, it's the 8th house and the 7th house. So other people's money, karma, what I owe to the world, what the world owes me, and the house of relationships and business partnerships. How did this show up for you? Most likely, it was issues within your relationship, your self-values, your self-confidence, as well as what you enjoy about life. And being confused around those things. The difference that plays out here between Pisces and Aries with this retrograde is action and confusion. The beginning of this retrograde was quick action, the kind of action that begins with jump first, think later. Then some slight confusion with both Venus and Mercury moved back into Pisces. So it was hot and then cooled down. The action as well at the beginning of this retrograde in Aries was felt through resistance. The action was like, oh, I'm feeling so resistance. I need to change my life. I need to make this change. But there is blocking, or someone or something is blocking me from taking the action. Someone is cock blocking you. I had to say that. Someone is cock blocking your action. Something, again, the action was there, but the resistance was around you taking action. You knew you needed to take action, but the resistance was there. That's what happens with these two planets retrograding or beginning this retrograde in the sign of Aries. So this was a time of quitting something or going back and forth with wanting to quit something that honestly may have begun for my mutable signs when Saturn first entered Pisces in March of 2023. Not so much for the Aries, Scorpio, and Taurus, but especially for my mutable energy. So reflect again on first, how did this play up for you? How has this played in your life in regards to the beginning of March? What has shown up for you? Now, we're at the end of this retrograde. We're at the end of all this energy. We're at the end of eclipse season for now. So since we're at the end of this, now is the solution time. Now is the resolution time. The energy shift is here, and you're going to feel it throughout the week. So I know that feels kind of exciting because it's been muddy, cloudy waters for a little bit. What can you expect? A very direct action plan that feels good to your soul. understanding what your soul needs to move forward confidently, and so you also don't get overwhelmed with the obvious. And I mean very obvious things that showed up in your life during this time. It was obvious. Like we said on last week's episode or the episode before, sometimes your subconscious is screaming at you. And that's what I mean obvious. Your consciousness doesn't want to always take the action, but your subconscious knows what to do. So whatever showed up, it was obvious, okay? It wasn't hidden. It was obvious. When we have retrogrades, sometimes the universe is yelling at us about what needs to change, much like I said about the subconscious yelling at us. I need this change. Retrogrades also bring the shift in energy we need, but often in a chaotic way. And it's still the change we need, though. And sometimes it's the change that we couldn't do ourselves. That's why it's so uncomfortable. We couldn't change that energy. We couldn't shift that energy. We couldn't do it for ourselves. So the retrogrades kind of make that happen. You now have the answer to change. The action will come when Venus and Mercury move back into Aries, where this retrograde began. April 16th for Mercury and April 30th for Venus. So with that, okay, you're going to now feel the clarity, but you're going to take the action when these planets ingress back into Aries, the action sign. And when that happens, we're going to have Mars out of Cancer, yay, and that will be into Leo. So adding to that fiery action we're going to be taking, feeling secure in the direction your life path is going, getting your confidence or mojo back, feeling like your health is back on track. You are finding joy again, because with this retrograde, when it comes to your joy, you weren't able to enjoy properly or didn't have the energy to really embrace what you enjoy to do. One thing I like to mention about Mercury retrograde is that it gives us lessons to be more mercurial. Sorry, I said that wrong. What does that mean? Mercury goes with the flow. It adapts, accepts, goes with plan B, C when plan A suddenly doesn't go as we planned. It teaches us the truth about life. That is that all we have is today. All we have is this exact moment. And sometimes that's easier for Geminis or other air signs, actually, to just understand life is what it is and it shows up. So I always say with Mercury retrograde, often it teaches us to accept what's unfolding in front of us. And a lot of our mental anguish is happening because we just can't accept something and we can't move forward and we just want to stay focused on what we can't accept. So how can you take this Mercury lesson, add in Venus, again, Venus ruling over our joys, our happiness, our loves, our pleasure, and apply it to your life when it comes to truly living in the moment? What awakenings did you have during this time when it comes to living in the moment? Did that show up for you at all? Were you stopping yourself from living in the moment? Were you letting yourself get all caught up in your mind and then not knowing how to move forward? What ways did you let fear take over? And again, away from living in the moment. What does living in the present moment look like to you? Remember, Venus is working at her best in the sign of Pisces. So she was working at her worst in Aries, and then she moved back to Pisces, getting kind of that strength and perseverance recharged in her. And then these two planets station direct and move back into Aries. But this time she's ready for that Aries energy. She's ready for that Mars energy. Venus and Mercury in Pisces, when they're both in Pisces, they want harmony, love, deep connection, understanding the soul, boundaryless connection, dreamy and otherworldly understanding. This time brought about some confusion within that construct in that context when it comes to connection. What connection are you seeking? Connection is the key to happiness. And we're becoming a world that has less and less true personal connection. One of the things I just did today, guys, you're going to be so excited, is I did an interview for my long-term listeners. You guys know my first probably 150, 160 episodes were interviews. And I haven't done one in 2 years, actually, since Saturn moved into Pisces. And it is amazing. I can't wait to release it for you guys next week. We got into such detail with my new friend, Connor, who's a holistic psychotherapist of many, many years. And we just really touched into the depth of our mind. So definitely you guys need to listen to this next week when that comes out, that episode. So it talks about the connection, the absence of connection, what the world is missing right now. We talk about plant medicine, all kinds of good Gucci things. So back to what I'm talking about, the current astrology. These two retrograding planets did a dance with Neptune, and now Neptune Pisces' modern ruler is in Aries, where these two planets began their retrograde. Whatever conflict began around March 1st is now going to be settled or start to come to an understanding this week into next week. It may just be a mental understanding of what had occurred. Sometimes it's not the actual physical understanding as much as it is the mental understanding of what had occurred. The resolution, the plan begins this week, but at the end of April, the 16th through the 30th, they will start the physical shift of the plan. Then the rest of the time, these two planets will spend in Aries. The plan will start. So the action, the plan, the following through will happen the end of April into May, well into summer. Something I was thinking about with this retrograde happening with Neptune transiting into Aries is that we are getting real with our mind. We're coming out of sort of la la land or delusions or the things we've been telling ourselves that maybe aren't quite true. Like I said about last week, I talked about the subconscious screaming at us. This week, we should really be seeing what's real and what is fantasy in our minds. What sort of fantasy thoughts have been coming up for you during this retrograde? There's always truth and excitement with fantasy. And I always say that fantasy was my first drug of choice and still one of my favorite things. I instantly go out of my mind, get myself out through fantasy. But there's a lot of truth to fantasy, manifesting, right? On this episode I did with Connor, I'll release next week, we talked about the science a little bit of manifesting and the world, and manifesting is creating, and it usually starts within fantasy. So there is real to that, but sometimes that fantasy can get a little bit taken out of proportion, or sometimes it really just is fantasy, pure fantasy, and nothing more than that. So we need a healthy level of fantasy and acceptance with that within ourselves in order to manifest, create new things in life, right? Every dream is a fantasy. So we need a healthy understanding of that. But with this retrograde, we sort of like, okay, that fantasy is not reality. That's just something that I'm taking myself out of myself. And you need to decipher which is which, especially for my mutable energy. There's going to be a really good wake-up call when these retrograde planets go back into Aries. And then when they go into Taurus, then we're going to be grounded. So now let's talk about this full moon in Libra happening in the cycle with the last solar eclipse in Aries. This is not a lunar eclipse. We're out of the eclipses for Libra right now in Aries. However, it's coming full circle. We just had the last Aries solar eclipse. Now we got the full moon in Libra. So my cardinal placements, you guys are going to be feeling this the most. Aries, Cancer, Libra, Capricorn. Venus, the ruling planet in Libra, is now stationing direct in the sign of Pisces. Her exaltation, where she is at her best. We are having a full moon in Libra, which tends to sometimes be hard. However, Venus, her ruler, is at her best. So it's not going to be so hard. It's going to be a solution-based understanding. Now, with the full moon, that means the sun is in Aries, going opposition to Libra. Again, Venus's opposition is Mars, Aries sign. So often, what can happen in general with a Libra full moon is it puts Libra energy on the spot, having to make a quick choice or face some sort of conflict. For my cardinal signs, if you aren't a Libra rising, where does Libra show up in your chart? That's where this is going to have, where this is going to come to a head. Again, facing some sort of conflict, but Venus stationing direct in her exaltation at the full moon is like constructive conflict, constructive choices. You're like, this is bringing to the forefront of your life, what is the core of your happiness? Like I had said earlier, what are your daily thoughts around happiness? What brings you happiness and joy? What are you doing and not doing in order to have happiness in your life? There's going to be some experiences that come with this full moon that is like, whoa, that doesn't make me happy anymore. Or does this make happy? You might also be forced to choose your happiness over something else or someone. This is forced thinking into introspective happiness, and it may come off guard. Like I said, it may come where you sort of have to force to choose yourself first, or you have to force yourself to make a decision. But with that decision will come clear visions, awakenings, and a deeper understanding. These themes around your happiness began about 18 to 20 months ago when these eclipses began in Libra and Aries. We are now ending this cycle, though, with this full moon and Venus direct in Pisces. So let's just say we're on a new happiness journey for you guys. You know what you need to do to find happiness. You know what you need to do to bring that happiness out of you. And this rebirth is like new things are making you happy. which is beautiful. And this full moon could be about letting go of things that no longer serve your happiness. Things that once made you happy, it's okay. It just might not make you happy anymore in your new phase of life, in your new journey, and learning to let that go. Here are some other themes. Making moves based on a new rebirth of self-confidence are a big theme. So now you're making those new life moves, but with a new rebirth of confidence. Conquering or addressing conflict. The conflict arose over the last 6 weeks. You didn't know how to approach it or tackle it. However, you have the balls or lack thereof, or the balls, the confidence to do it now. You might be thrown on the spot for a little bit with it, but it is going to really come out of you naturally. Healthy detachment from an old relationship, so a new one can begin to blossom in certain ways. Sometimes we have hidden attachments, again, that our subconscious is screaming at us, but it's like stopping us from actual healthy attachments. So you're having a healthy detachment to something, or maybe it's a new stage in your relationship you've been, and it takes a fresh turn with a healthy detachment. Kind of like it doesn't matter anyways, so might as well let it go. Sometimes our attachments create a lot of issues, or issues is lack of a better word. Our attachments create a lot of unrealistic expectations. That's what I'm going for. And this detachment will be healthy around a recent issue that keeps getting brought up in your relationship. And so this shift will help you let go of those unrealistic expectations. And maybe also these expectations are the ones you place on yourself, which are often the hardest, and how you show up in relationships and how you think you should show up in relationships. Feeling like you never match up or compare. Let go of those expectations. Again, the rebirth of your self-confidence is on your side, but when those expectations, let go of them. You're showing up exactly how you're meant to show up at this exact period in your life. And I believe that in all of our moments, even our not so happy moments, our darker moments, the moments where we're learning, we're having trials, we're having tribulations, we're having beautiful moments, I think we show up exactly the way we're meant to show up in that moment. So you maybe showed up in these not so easy ways over these last 6 weeks or so. However, it brought to the forefront the actual change your subconscious needs. So that actual detachment, healthy detachment. We are so focused on today's world on so much shit that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. So with this full moon, let go of what doesn't matter. And most things don't matter. At the end, when you're on your deathbed, what's going to matter? That's all you really should be worrying about. That's what I try to tell myself. It grounds me when I get a little overwhelmed. That's all that matters. So this weekend, with Mercury stationing direct, Venus stationing direct, the full moon in Libra, be love, be joy, be happiness, be the things that you wish to see in the world. That is the truth. If you want the world to show up, if you want it to look a certain way, you have to be that as well. That's how that works. You have to be what you want to see in the world. And learn to be that in an unshakable way. Since January, it's really shaken a lot of people to the core about who they are. So find your happiness, find your joy, be the change. What is that? Who said that? Is that, I don't know who said that quote, be the change you wish to see in the world. Someone famous. I feel like it's Mandela. Someone like that? Mother Teresa. I don't know. But be present, be joy, be happiness. I can't say that enough. Find your happiness, find the why to your happiness, and spread love to others. We need that more than ever in this world. Don't hibernate, don't detach, go out there and spread love. I love you all. Have an amazing and beautiful week, a good full moon, and I'll be back next week and things will be much smoother. And look, my podcast is much smoother now that Mercury's direct. It only took me once to start. It feels good. It feels good. I love you all. Thank you for connecting. Please send this to someone. Rate, review it, subscribe. That's the best way to get this podcast out there. And you guys are awesome doing that for me almost weekly. And I really appreciate it. Love you all. Goodbye.